Welcome to Expedition Networking, a special segment of the Networking RX podcast. I'm Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host for this program. For those of you who are familiar, on the Networking RX podcast, we share information and have conversations with experts, such as authors, researchers, and social scientists. And all of these programs are aimed at helping you learn how to become better at building professional relationships and understanding why they work. In this Expedition Networking segment, however, we're going to bring on successful entrepreneurs and unique professionals and explore their networking adventure and learn how they used relationships to create lasting success. Today on Expedition Networking, we have Gresham W. Harkless Jr., goes by Gresh, and he's the founder of CB Nation and Blue 16 Media. CB Nation is a business-to-business brand focusing on increasing the business success rate by providing visibility and resources for CEOs, entrepreneurs, and various business owners. Consists of blogs. If you go to ceoblognation.com, I've got podcasts, ceopodcast.com. Videos, CB Nation TV, and then Blue 16 Media is a digital marketing agency that provides digital marketing services, including web design, SEO, but they provide that to small, medium-sized businesses and organizations. Central to Gresh's marketing philosophy is that you're a media company, and so he's working with his clients, developing marketing strategies, connect them with their targets and their goals. He's a proud graduate of Howard University and Georgetown University. He's also a 2020 Leadership Center, a graduate of the 2020 Leadership Center for Excellence Young Professional Program. And in 2016, he was recognized in Alexandria, Virginia, by the Chamber of Commerce of being one of 40 under 40. So Gresh, welcome to the program.
Frank, I appreciate you. Thanks for the opportunity to hop on.
I don't know where we go from here with this bio. You've done a lot. And I guess doing the math, you can't be much over 40 if we don't need to get into your age. But I do want to start out, you just kind of sharing your story because you graduated from Howard, Georgetown, and those are both two great institutions. Something led you to this, CB Nation and was it Blue 16 Media? I mean, I don't think you left college doing that. You had other plans. Life got in the way. So tell us the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Life definitely got in the way, and it definitely was and is a windy road. But for me, it was all about like kind of tapping into like some of the things I did when I was a kid. So I was kind of like the proverbial kid, I guess, that, sold potato chips on the playground and did things like that. And I used to get my mom and dad to go to MJ Designs to get like necklaces or get beads to make necklaces and sell them on the playground. But one of the things I did as a kid kind of, I think, planted the seed for like everything I'm ultimately doing now. And my dad was in the military. So he retired from the Air Force. He did his 20 years. But when I was about 10 years old or so, he actually went TDY to an entirely different country. So he went to the UAE, United Arab Emirates. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And so he was there for about a year. He did a smaller stint when I was younger, but I don't remember that as much. I remember it more when I was 10 because we drove him down to the airport. I was crying like a baby, in the backseat, crying on the way back, and probably for a couple of weeks after that, because that was my guy, and still is my guy. And getting the opportunity to kind of spend time with him, shoot basketball, do all those things. I didn't have that. But one of the things I did, as a kid is I started a family newspaper, and the family newspaper wasn't anything, I guess, huge. It was me getting on Microsoft Word, adding some clip art, and I would put some family news that was going on in our family at that time. And this was before, FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, and all of those kind of things that we have now and those luxuries we have. So that was kind of the only way that I was able to kind of let my dad know about like all those things that were going on, and we would mail him care packages. But one of the other things I did was I sold a subscription to my family members and friends of the family as well too. do. And the reason I bring all that up is because when I was, graduating from school, it was during the economic crisis in 2009. And then I got my master's in 2010. It was a crazy time. Just I would take jobs, and then my bosses who I thought were going to mentor me were leaving. And then the people in the on the team were leaving, people I thought I was going to look up to and learn from. And this happened job after job after job. So it was kind of like, what am I even supposed to do? I don't know where I'm supposed to be. So I bounced around to a bunch of different jobs. I took my absolute favorite job, which was kind of working with kids. And I was running sports camps all across Northern Virginia. Truthfully enjoyed it. Hands down, my absolute favorite job, just because I got a chance to be like the PE teacher for all the preschools in the area. But I didn't feel like it was stable. So seeing like so much instability already in jobs that I had, I left that, but I really truly missed it. So I talked with the people there. They said, hey, we really miss you. You can come back, you can do well. And so I decided to come back, and I got laid off 3 months later. So that, that kind of changed me tremendously, because I felt I was upset at the situation, but I was kind of more upset at myself because I felt like I didn't trust myself in that situation, because I felt like it wasn't stable before, but I really missed it. So needless to say, that really kind of jump-started my entrepreneurial path. I had another job, but that job I also knew I was going to get laid off from, just because the funding was going to get cut from that company. And then as I started to build that. I started to build my digital marketing business. I was already doing a lot of freelance writing and the blog and everything. And that's kind of like what led me to everything that I'm doing now. So I've been in business for about 9 years, been doing the blog in some form, shape, or fashion for probably about 10 years or so. So definitely very much so a busybody, as you can tell, but that's kind of like what planted that seed and what made me kind of run with it.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you sound like I was when I was a kid. I sold night crawlers. So
nice.
when it rained, we would all go to I was telling my kids the other day, we'd all go to the golf course and pick night crawlers. It'd be out in the thousands. And my parents are really good at grabbing them. I was just a little kid, but I stayed at home in the summer and would just, 35 cents a dozen or $1 for 3 dozen, and had these little bins in the basement. And, or Michigan, they had returnable bottles. So I'd go walk along the road and pick up returnable bottles, and make money. And but like you, I went and got a job, because that's what college really kind of gears you for, doesn't it? It's totally focused on that. I mean, there are entrepreneurial programs now, but even still, I think the people who work at colleges and universities, they don't get the mindset, because they're all getting paychecks, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that it was a blessing and a curse kind of graduating during that time, because I read a lot of like Robert Kiyosaki books, and that's where I learned, because I felt like I had entrepreneurial tendencies, but I didn't really have an environment to kind of teach me what that was, or even to push that along. So it's just like little things that I did. But after reading a lot and kind of immersing myself, talking with business owners on a regular basis, I became a lot more aware of that environment, aware, and on an even deeper level, aware that it was even possible. Because I think so many times people want to start businesses and they have their 9 to 5, but they don't ever kind of go beyond that. They don't actually try to do that. And even if they fail, that's fine. They tried, but a lot of times people are kind of, as they say, I think on Shark Tank, entrepreneurs instead of trying to actually go out and build it.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is, it's kind of like people going off to college. If your parents went to college, you're much more likely to go to college. And if your parents have had a business, you're more likely to understand really what it's all about. Before we hit record, we were talking about, working, quitting a 40-hour a week job to work 80 hours a week, self-employed. And it's very true. But if you're a kid and you see that, and I see that with my kids, I've got my youngest he's uber entrepreneurial. He's between his sophomore and junior year in college, well, during the pandemic, he wasn't going to get an internship. Doing great in school, wasn't getting an internship. And he just said, you know what? I'm going to go buy a power washer. I'm going to go see what kind of money I can make. And he just hustled. He made more money than I did that summer. Nice. But I think that's good, because he sees that. And that's, as you were You are an Army brat, or a military brat, I
Air
should
Force,
say.
yeah, Air Force brat, yeah,
Yeah. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but my dad was a
yeah.
college professor, and that's what he understood. And my brother and sister became self-employed the same month I did. And I think my dad was going to freak out because he understood that environment of, well, you go be a teacher, and it's very secure. But I think we struggled with it. I've struggled with it more than my kids will, because I got beat up on things that they won't get beat up on. And probably the same
Mhm.
thing for you. You get beat up on things.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that I started to realize a little bit later on, is that, there's people that don't want to see you succeed. There's people that don't want to see you fail. And sometimes we don't realize that failure is a path of success. So like my dad was, he was in the Air Force. I was definitely, a military brat, an Air Force brat. And sometimes still is. He'll probably say too. But the big thing about it is just understanding that sometimes people have fears, and that fear can sometimes be projected upon you. And if that's not something that's in somebody's reality, sometimes it's not that they don't believe in you. It's not that they can't, they don't want to help you. They don't want to see you succeed. It's sometimes it's just different. And I think when you start to create sometimes a different reality, you do get those people that love you, but they love you because they don't want you to kind of scab your knee. They don't want you to see you fall. But we have to kind of realize, and what I've learned a lot through entrepreneurship and business, is that a lot of times it's not don't scab your knee. It's, falling down and getting back up that really leads you to success and continue to keep going.
Yeah. Well, I remember my father saying to me at one point, of course, in business, you struggle, we have ups and downs, and you'll have ups and downs, and I think they'll always be there. But he said, why don't you just go get a job and get somebody who pay you, whatever. And you don't have to worry about these things. But again, he's a college professor, and it's a very stable environment for the most part. Don't make a ton of money, but it's always going to be students, right? It's a very stable environment, and he doesn't understand in the working world, you do, that you can walk in and, hey, we just don't need you anymore. Oh,
right.
Now what do I do?
Right.
And I think even more, there's even in the university settings, there's less and less stability. So it's all going away, but that's
Yeah.
okay. We all got to work.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you.
Mhm.
If you won I won't say the lottery, I won't say millions of dollars, because I would quit too. But let's say, so if you came into $100,000, how would you invest that in your business?
Great question. And it kind of speaks to a lot of what I end up doing with, CB Nation, because originally I had two different kind of brands that I was kind of building, but I started to merge them both together, where, CB Nation is kind of an alignment with Blue 16 Media, because it's a way that I use it to kind of connect with people, to network, and to to reach more people, and to have more interactions and community and connections as well too. So funny enough, like when I was trying to figure out, am I going to choose this or that, I asked myself a very similar question. If I had money to like invest in my business, where would I put it? So my answer is now is probably going to be the same as it was then, is that I would probably, create, more and more connection opportunities through CB Nation, more, blog posts, more content, just have a full all out kind of, media network that caters to entrepreneurs and business owners, largely because that's who I try to connect with, those CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners. So if I had $100,000, I would definitely, invest even more into creating more content, more of a platform in and of itself, rather than, sometimes leveraging other platforms, so that
Yeah.
you can build and own that community, so to speak.
Isn't it interesting how things have changed? Because 30 years ago, that answer probably would have been equipment, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got a Blue Yeti, I've got those things aren't. I mean, they're not cheap, but they're not horribly expensive. They're not barriers to entry, small barriers to entry. You don't necessarily need a studio. I don't know. It's interesting, but we are in a content phase where content is king. Well, cash will always be king, but
Yeah.
content is kind of the driver. You can do a whole lot with content. I know you do a lot with networking. At what point did you realize that you're a hustler as well, but what point did you realize, hey, I really need to work smarter and start tapping into other people out here?
Funny enough, so when I had my last job, my very last job, I had been laid off and I took another job. It was an outside sales job. Um, it was then that I think a seed was planted that showed me how important networking was, but I didn't, really know it at that time. So I was actually doing cold calls and I was trying to get people to buy advertising at that time. So I would call, and because I always, I knew enough about, digital marketing, I knew enough about websites and SEO. I would always use that as a way to get in the door and hopefully talk to somebody about, advertising. So I would look at people's websites and say, okay, this isn't up to par. So I was cold calling somebody. His name is Mike Moss, and he was a member of a networking group. So I called him to try to sell him advertising. He must, and he was funny enough, years later, they say he never really picks up the phone as much as he did. So for whatever reason, he picked up that phone. I talked with him. He invited me to, sit down with him, and I tried to, give him my pitch, had my deck and all those things. But he's like, hey, you should come visit my networking group. So I went to go visit that networking group. And as that time I was working for the company I was before. And I was like, maybe I'll join. I'm not sure, but I started working with him from an SEO standpoint through like a kind of my side business that I was doing at that time. And then they were like, and he was telling me to join for the SEO, the website, instead of, the company piece, because that's not going to get you as far as it would if you started your own business.
Right.
So that's what really kind of planted that seed. And I eventually joined. And so like, it was literally, that relationship and some of those phone calls, and there were many, many other people that those relationships have been absolutely everything. And I don't think I fully understood what networking was before that, but like being in that group and being able to kind of learn a lot more about networking, especially being young, in business, kind of planted those seeds of how important it is to kind of build those relationships, and how sometimes it might be something that happens tomorrow, but it might be something that happens 5 years down the line as well too. It's just important to kind of continue to cultivate that.
Yeah, and again, I think college gets in the way. They give lip service to networking. They don't really understand it. And that's just because they don't really do it. I mean, it's just, they don't. And I'm sure if there were a professor here, he would probably take me to task and disagree with me, but it's the reality, I mean, the students come to them. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a whole department that's out there marketing. If you're Ohio State or Maryland or Georgetown or, kids in high school are looking at the brochures. You're going to get your share. And it's a different world. It's certainly a different world. Do you play sports as a kid?
I play basketball.
Okay.
I play basketball. Yes.
All right. All the way through high school?
Yeah. So I played through high school. I always said I'm about, 5'9", 5'8" or so.
Right.
So I've said I've been this height since I was in like 5th grade. So I literally moved and played like every position. So I started out as playing the center because I was taller than everybody.
Yeah.
And then I moved forward, point guard, and everything like that. So my last couple of years in high school, I played point guard or so. So, but I didn't cultivate my skills as much as I should, because I should have been working on everything instead of thinking I was going to continue to grow. So that was, my downfall. But so
yeah.
I didn't play much. I play here and there beyond that.
Yeah, I think soccer is the sport in America, the up and coming sport. And the only reason I say that is, and I've had this conversation with my kids, to be and I'm not even saying a pro basketball player, but a decent high school or a college basketball player, you need to be 6'2", 6'3", unless you've really got some mad ball handling skills and jumping skills. Football, you got to be a beast. You have to be big. Yeah. Soccer, it didn't really matter as much. In fact, you look at some of the, Lionel Messi is probably a little shorter than you,
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, oh, well, too late for us now, right?
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see all that, with the height and everything. Cause I even see like that seems to be changing a little bit more in basketball, where if you're able to shoot like Steph Curry, obviously
Yeah.
he's 6'3", but he's not a big guy, but he's
No.
still able, if you're able to kind of take care of your fundamentals a lot better, sometimes it might serve you better. But I like that idea because I've always wondered why soccer or football, depending on where you are in the
Yeah,
country, is
sure.
not as big as it is here. It's big everywhere else in the world, but not as big here. So it's interesting. I think that's a good bet because I don't understand why it's not as big.
Well, I think it's coming. I think it's I think it's coming. A lot of people are certainly are certainly predicting it. Um, what's the best advice you've ever gotten? I'm sure your dad gave you an earful.
Yeah, I mean, I think my dad was somebody that I watched a lot more, and I think it's the consistency, and I think that's his military background. I think he works for the government as well too. So I think showing in and day out is probably the best thing that I've gotten from my dad more than anything else. Just the consistency, and I think so many times, especially like we were talking a little bit about people that were potentially going to start a business. I think most people want to quote unquote start a business because they want freedom. And I think what I learned, quickly, as you start to run a business, it's actually the consistency. It's going to be the processes, those things that are actually going to help you to grow and to expand. So it's more or less you're implementing and deciding what systems you're going to choose, but you're not getting away from the consistency. It's not like, okay, I'm going to wake up at 9 a.m. today and I wake up at 5 p.m. the next. Usually very consistent people are the people that are successful. So that's one of the skills I'm sure my dad, got from the military on a level, and still probably, has a lot of, working in the government. But I think that's the biggest thing that I think people kind of miss out on.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. Let's switch gears here to wrap up. Let's talk about your business. What you're looking for, what would be good referrals, and how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pretty much, in what I like to call the visibility game. So I'm all about, helping people to get found, online. So people that are looking to maybe get their website developed or getting even support for their website if there's certain breaks or things that happen. And then of course, like the SEO piece is I always say kind of like a Wayne Gretzky quote that I always adopt to or connect with SEO is skating to where the puck is, not to where the puck's going to be. Or skating to where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is.
Gotcha.
And the reason I say that is because you try to figure out where your target clients are searching, and then you try to be there with some type of content, whether it be blog or your pages of your website, or something along those lines. But that's a big part of what it is I do. So people that need help with that, that's always great. And then I'm always looking for people that want to contribute to the platform, to CB Nation, whether it's blog, guest blog posts, being guests on podcasts or shows or vlogs or anything along those lines. Always looking for people that have really great stories or a really great impact that they can provide to the business community. And it's a hub for everything that I do. You can go to iamgresh.com. That has links to everything, and that's iamgresh.com. You can also check out blue16media.com, and that's blue16media.com as well.
All right, I will. I'll get your Gresh, I am Gresh email in the show notes. I know I've got it. So there it is. Well, I appreciate your time today. This has been great. It's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been, I feel like we're kindred spirits, Frank. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be on the mic.
To wrap things up, remember, we're looking for some enterprising business types to join our team as franchisees of AmSpirit Business Connections. Our franchisees work with entrepreneurs, sales representatives, and professionals in their area to help them become more successful through networking and the exchange of quality business referrals in a structured weekly morning meeting. This is a unique franchise opportunity, you see, because these meetings are in the morning. A successful business type or professional can add this franchise opportunity onto what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else. For a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week, these franchisees work the AmSpirit Business Connections model. The rest of the time, they're attorneys, accountants, realtors, coaches, and consultants of various kinds. The wonderful thing is that not only do our franchisees realize a financial gain from operating the AmSpirit Business Connections model, but the business networks that they build and develop become a great source of referrals for their primary business as well. Perhaps you know someone, perhaps you are that someone. Whatever the case, to learn more about the AmSpirit Business Connections franchise opportunity, please contact me using the email in the show notes or the one we provide at the end of this program.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.